I want to be happier. Do you? Hi, my name is Dan Cohen, and I'm a neurologist. I became a brain doctor for a really peculiar reason. I had an interest in things like out of body experiences and other things of a spiritual nature. Most other brain doctors and scientists think that things like out of body experiences can't happen because they believe, unlike me, that the physical brain actually produces the mind. And if so, how could the brain leave the body? That's ridiculous. You may be thinking that this guy is a little wacky. People often think that way about me, and now look at me. I'm a cartoon character. That proves it. Wait a minute. Don't rush to judgment. Just like you, I've had to function in the real world, and I've done all right. When I finished my training in neurology, I had to earn a living, and I didn't want to practice medicine. So I started a business making brainwave monitors and sleep diagnostic equipment. Then I licensed a nose Band-Aid, although my board of directors thought I was nuts. But after the football players started wearing it and Breathe Right became $100 million brand, they thought I was a genius. So for the next few minutes, please listen. Then judge for yourself whether I'm crazy or not. I don't think I'm really any different from you or anyone else. I just want to be happy. When I began doing what I'm about to tell you, all I really wanted was greater joy and meaning in my life. I wanted to feel more, particularly heartfelt emotions. I wanted greater connection with all the people in my life, and I wanted to better understand my purpose. Don't you want more joy, meaning, and connectedness from life? I was also curious about all of those strange things like out of body and spiritual phenomena. I wanted to know if there really is a link between spirituality and everyday happiness. Or were all those stories about the Buddha and others just fiction? I had been a meditator for many years, but I never had any real spiritual experiences. I regularly experienced no thought and greater peace and equanimity while meditating, but I wasn't more joyful throughout the day. Life was very two-dimensional, just like this cartoon character. If other spirits were present while I was in session, I wanted to perceive them. I wanted a greater sense of peace and trust all day long, not just while I was in session. I'm sure, just like you, I wanted to exist in a state of being that was more joyful, more loving for myself and others, and yes, more connected to the divine. There had to be an easier way to get there rather than meditating in a cave in Tibet for the next 30 years. After all, I was a brain doctor. I had learned a lot about the brain and psychology. I was convinced that the brain was the seat of the ego, not the soul, and that to live more joyfully, all I needed to do was to experience more soul and less ego. I expose the ego for what it is, an addiction, in my book, Addicted to My Ego. In the book, I explain what it takes to move beyond an ego-identified state, allowing us to consciously accept our feelings in order to deal with them as we shed our beliefs. Many people, like me, consider the soul to be our higher mind. However, for us to function in this material world, our higher mind must be translated by the brain with all of its egoic filters. That's the problem. We typically self-identify with our egoic beliefs and conditioning, and as a result, we get in our own way. In so doing, we become the obstacle to our spiritual connection and all of its benefits. So, how do we get around the ego? Well, if the ego is merely a function of the brain, and the soul really is our higher mind, what would happen if we put the brain to sleep? Would we be able to retain awareness from our higher mind? And could we learn to function more like this in everyday life? Would this way of being create greater joy? It was time to use some of my neurologic know-how. When a person is asleep, the best way to wake them up is to touch them or speak to them. In 1997, we began experimenting with sound and vibration. We learned that if you allow a person to fall asleep while listening to music that they can both hear and feel, and you then vary the intensity of the sound and vibration, the person's brain, with its ego, will become asleep or nearly so. And that over time, in that state, they become increasingly more aware. That was pretty cool. We had developed a way to induce a state of profound relaxation and meditation. But did we really have a state of being that was truly of a more spiritual nature? The answer was a big fat no. So we decided to add magnetic field stimulation. Why? Our rationale was that the soul or higher mind uses the brain as a translator. Since the brain has its own electromagnetic field, the higher mind could conceivably interface with the brain at that level. If so, it was logical to assume that we may be able to stimulate the human energy system directly by using a magnetic field. Fortunately, two members of our team were well equipped to help. These two gifted individuals could perceive the human energy system, which we believe includes our soul or spiritual self. One of them directly inspected our energy system while out of body during thousands of sessions, while the other one could do so while in body. The human energy system is quite complex, with many levels. Some aspects of this system, such as the chakras and hara line, are anchored to the physical body. Another aspect, which we call the soul, is also attached to the hara line, but seems to have a mind of its own. It can move around and throughout some or all of the energetic and physical body. When this aspect of our spiritual self is present throughout our entire physical and energetic body, a person becomes more spiritually embodied. It took us a while, but we learned how to stimulate certain aspects of the human energy system with magnetic fields to create greater spiritual embodiment. The more we experienced this state in session, the more we could manifest this state in daily life. This is when the real benefits started to kick in. In session, even I could now perceive other spiritual entities. However, much more importantly, I was different during the day. I was much more at peace and felt more connected to the divine. I was clearly on a transformative path, and my ego was playing a far lesser role in my life. I was experiencing heartfelt emotions like never before. My relationships deepened, and I was more accepting of others, and even more importantly, of myself and my own circumstances. I also better understood and had greater trust in my path in life. Isn't this what you want? To be more at peace and connected to spirit with less ego activity? To experience more heartfelt emotions, have deeper relationships, be more accepting of yourself and others, feel more fulfilled, and have a clearer idea about your purpose? During our experiments, it became clear that creating greater spiritual embodiment, or presence, was the key. The more embodied we became, the less our ego was triggered, the more our energy system changed, and the more we transformed. This is what our energy transformation looked like, according to our observers. So, am I crazy? If being happy is crazy, then yes. If no longer being addicted to my ego is crazy, then definitely yes. If experiencing love for myself and others much more deeply is crazy, then absolutely yes. Is there a link between our spirituality and these things? Clearly. And every one of us has it in us. On a practical note, we had been working with a team of engineers to build all of our experimental equipment. After getting it right, we identified and cost reduced the key components so that we could affordably offer this to others in a comfortable seating platform. I use it every day, and it's been fabulous for me. Wouldn't you like to see these changes in your own life? To learn more, please visit us at toolstoawaken.com.